few uploads ago, I published a video documenting the history of Breath of the Wild any percent speedrun world records through most of 2024. Since then, something quite remarkable has happened by some coincidence, synchronicity, or maybe even a spark of new life and excitement in the Zelda speedrunning community, specifically for this game, because someone has finally pulled off the coveted full board sweep, taking first place in every main category. This is Speedrunning Infotainment Gold, and I want to spread the news. It all started coming to a head just as I was putting the finishing touches on that world record history video, and it's been amazing to see, and my prediction at the end was spot on, so it sets the stage for an eventual part 2. Anyway, until that documentary was about 95% ready to publish, it looked like the story would end with a 23:23 time set by player 5 in March 2024, about a month and a half before Tears of the Kingdom was released. Many of us, myself included, took time away from Breath of the Wild to enjoy the sequel, exploring, having fun, and even speedrunning a little bit. But by the time I was wrapping up production, former world record holder Koroks re-entered the scene and achieved a new best time. And then another. If you've ever tried speedrunning it, you know how difficult beating Breath of the Wild in under 24 minutes is, let alone with that amount of consistency. Only a handful of people have ever managed to pull it off, and some have only done it once, unable to match or surpass their peak. Others are actively pushing themselves, improving their personal bests, and have a few 23s under their belt. However, Player 5 stands above the rest in almost every measurable way regarding Breath of the Wild speedrunning. He's a gifted runner who entered the game with a competitive yet humble approach in the summer of 2020. For 11 months, he was on the any percent grind, bringing the world record down to 25:33. During that time, he also, of course, significantly brought down related categories. The Great Plateau any percent time, any percent no amiibo, and for a bit of fun, he started throwing in miscellaneous categories, things like monkey percent, where you must act like a monkey, and damage list, which is basically any percent without wind bombs or spending too much time in the cold. But after that 11th month, he started branching into more extended categories on the main board. You see, besides any percent, Breath of the Wild has 4 other main categories on the leaderboard. There's all dungeons, where you must complete all 4 divine beasts before finishing the game. All main quests, where as the name suggests, you must complete the game's main quests. All shrines, where there's a focus on completing all 120 shrines, ignoring dungeons and quests. And finally, the king of them all, 100%, also known as Hundo. This category is a massive undertaking. Not only do you have to beat the game, but you must also complete all dungeons, all shrines, all main quests, all side quests, recover all memories. You'll need to fully upgrade your hearts, stamina containers, and armor, collect all the Koroks, get the Hestu's gift, unlock all map towers, and visit every location, upgrade plus the Sheikah Slate runes, collect all Kilton's monster medals, the horse gear, and don't forget the Master Sword and Compendium envelope for filling out your compendium. You name it, Hundo requires it. And so Player 5 began with the most logical next step, all dungeons, the next shortest run, if you will. For the next 9 months, from the summer of 21 to spring of 22, he continued improving his times in all dungeons, various forms of any percent, and several other miscellaneous categories, like 2-player 1 controller, rake in the lake, master sword, die percent, all dog treasures, and butter dog, dog with the butter on him, achieving top times in all. And so now with 2 world records comfortably clinched on the main board with any percent in all dungeons, and a plethora of others from the category extensions, he again sought more of a challenge, so he started running all main quests, forming a pattern of exploring other categories whenever competition slowed or massive milestones were reached. Over the next month, he ran all main quests almost exclusively and brought down his time 35 minutes to achieve a 2-hour, 21 minute, and 59 second world record by the end of April 2022. Now, with 3 main board records secured, you might think he would push forward and start going for the sweep by learning all shrines, but instead, he returned to any percent to continue driving down his time. Not only is just about everything in any percent necessary for success in the longer categories, but it's also his favorite category to run, and it's objectively the most prestigious or prominent category on the board, as any percent is the default from which all other categories add objectives. And it's the one that's displayed when you visit the Breath of the Wild page on speedrun.com. And so over the next month or thereabout, he improved his time to bring his personal record down to a 24:10. However, 3 days earlier, Koroks had achieved his first world record of a slightly lower 24:10, taking one of P5's titles. Regardless, as opposed to chasing any percent, even though he was that close, he returned to all dungeons to improve the world record over there, and began running all shrines, all within the final week of July. By the middle of August, he was back to any percent, not only shaving a few milliseconds off the world record to get an even lower 24:10, but breaking through the 24-minute barrier and continuing on for the next 4 months, switching between that and all dungeons among the occasional meme categories, effectively remaining dominant in almost every category he ever submitted a run to. Then, in the last week of November, he returned to all main quests and lowered his time by over 7 minutes to achieve a 2-hour, 9-minute, and 42-second world record. And after that, it was back to any percent yet again, and various forms thereof, including amiibo, no amiibo, bug limit, which basically restricts the use of glitches, and master mode. This took him through the beginning of 2023, brought down the any percent world record by 2 seconds, and prepared him to perform at Games Done Quick, a well-respected speedrunning charity event. The following month, he once again returned to all shrines for a month-and-a-half-long grind to bring his time down nearly half an hour to 4 hours, 8 minutes, and 37 seconds, and for the first time securing 4 out of 5 of the main board category world records by the end of March 2023. Most people would assume a speedrunner of this level would immediately start learning the final and longest category to take a shot at the coveted board sweep, but Player 5 chose to let the process unfold organically in its own time. Instead of rushing into a potentially grueling grind, he returned to good old reliable any percent for the next full year from April 2023 to April 2024. Of course, during this time, he also played tons of Tears of the Kingdom, and as far as Breath of the Wild, completely fresh strategies and optimizations for new time saves were constantly being integrated or swapped out during this time, including new glitches, new wind bombs, not to mention subtle combat improvements, and all that stuff and more. After that year spent back with any percent and some early days Tears of the Kingdom grinds, P5 came back to Breath of the Wild full time with a new all dungeons grind in late June 2024, where he ultimately reclaimed the world record with a 1:25:45 in a matter of a few days. He continued jumping around between all dungeons, all main quests, and the lower forms of any percent for the next 2 months through the end of August, and it was at this point, a little over 4 years into his Zelda speedrunning endeavors, when he finally decided to rise to the challenge of the infamous Hundo Fundo, completing his first run on September 18th, 2024, with a time of 21 hours, 12 minutes, and 57 seconds. This wasn't a world record, just a starting point. His very next submitted run, a mere 6 days later, shaved about 4 hours and 40 minutes off of that time, and he'd continue on a dedicated 100% grind until November, when he achieved the first ever sub 15-hour Hundo run with a 14:53:43.
14:53:43. There we go.
Now he had finally, at one time or another, held all main board records. However, he still had yet to keep all 5 titles simultaneously, effectively becoming the speedrunning equivalent of a boxing undisputed heavyweight champion holding all the belts together, or the Suigi of Breath of the Wild.
16 stars dead.
Because before he could achieve this new 100% hour barrier breaking run, Koroks would overtake his long-standing 23:23 any percent time, as I mentioned at the start. quite historic when you think about it in this context. And because of the sheer volume of extra objectives in 100%, and given how insanely optimized any percent has become, by the time he had reclaimed the any percent world record with a 23:09, fellow top runner Ikurapan had reclaimed the Hundo record. In other words, both the shortest and longest categories were exceptionally competitive during this time and were now evading him. So much more can go wrong with a Hundo run as well. A single mistake can kill your run's potential for a competitive time, making it far more frustrating and disheartening to start over. So it's not a huge surprise there was a constant threat from other runners who specialize in one or two other categories to dethrone him, and dethrone him they did. But Player 5 answered back 2 days later with an absolutely dominant any percent grind to bring the time down to that 23:09 I just mentioned, and then again on December 14th with a new Hundo world record of 14 hours, 47 minutes, and 23 seconds. Despite years of playing at the highest level, trading world records across categories, and coming close several times, Player 5 had finally done it. He is now the first and currently only speedrunner to completely sweep the Breath of the Wild leaderboards.
And there it is.
Other players like Johnny Boom or Skedodara have come close, but each one of them both were missing one category or another. But with Player 5, while there were plenty of times his records were beaten along the way, as they will continue to be well into the future, he is the current reigning GOAT of Breath of the Wild. If there were a single universally recognized Hall of Fame for such things, he'd be an eventual candidate. Most of the world record improvements over his course of time were improvements over his own personal records. Not nearly as often was he competing to beat others as he was competing to improve upon his own achievements. And I believe therein lies the proper mindset. He just happens to do it better than everyone else. To celebrate the sweep, he recently played all main board categories back to back to back to back to back in a 24-hour live stream, and he just barely made it. And a while back, he did a 24-hour any percent marathon stream setting out to beat the game 50 times in a row, which he did in a seemingly effortless fashion. The man just loves to play the game, and it's fun watching him get better and better at it. That's why he's a crowd favorite and the people's champ. And as I said earlier, I like to think of him as the Suiji or the Nifsky of Breath of the Wild, the current undisputed champion in boxing terms, and I imagine he'll remain at or near the top of the boards for as long as he remains active running. With that in mind, at the time of this recording, and I do mean literally at the time of this recording, he is currently running any percent to beat the game under 23 minutes. He's been on pace to do it going into Dark Beast, and he will, I guarantee you, accomplish this goal.
So close, man. So close. I'm starting to feel it. I know I've said this like, I don't know, the last a week and a half maybe, but it's like, it's coming back.
Sooner or later, it's most definitely going to happen, maybe even before I finish creating this video. That's sort of the beauty of speedrunning, and it's what creates so much excitement in this community. So go check him out. He's got a video on the same topic you should watch to hear more direct from the source. Link is in the description. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. Leave them in the comments. And thank you so much to my channel members, and I cannot say thank you enough. As for the rest of you, thank you so very much for watching. Help other Zelda people find this video by leaving a like on your way out, and consider subscribing yourself. I make Zelda stuff, you seem to enjoy Zelda stuff, it's free, you can always change your mind later, what's not to love about all that? Anyway, until next time, stay cool and always keep punching out there. Aloha.